Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am super excited to have you here with me today again. For today's video, I really want to do a full drag but modern makeup. I really want to incorporate that new style of drag, which is really realistic but also very high fashion as well, and doing more of a actual beauty makeup but keeping it very draggy and extreme. I really want to do like a very high fashion Latina, very beautiful, gorgeous beat to the gods. And also this video is going to be a voiceover just because right now it's really warm and that's why I'm wearing a tank top and I'm all tanned up. I literally have one of the worst farmer's tan you can ever see. And with all that being said, let me go ahead and prep my skin, put my contacts, my tapes, and also my wig cap. I am not an expert at wigs, but I always try to make it look at least presentable. But let me go ahead and do all that and I'll be right back with a voiceover. To start off, I'm going to be priming my eyes with 24-hour base by MAC and then going straight with my tapes just to create a shape and also to make this very clean and precise as well. Taking Juvia's Place Concealer in number 22, I'm going to clean the bottom of my brow and also using this as a primary base for all my shadow. And quickly setting that in place with MAC Prep and Prime Translucent Loose Powder. Using Juvia's Place Warrior 2 palette in the shade Kufuru, I am going to start sketching out the shape and also building the contrast on my eyelids. With the same brush but no more product, I'm going to be feathering out the edges, that way I can start creating my blend as well. Using the shade Yoded from the same palette, I'm going to be blending out the edges of this one and also create more color and contrast as well. Mind you, this is drag makeup, so I'm really going to take it really far out. Using a bigger brush with the same shade, I am going to further blend the edges of this one and also start blending it out into my temples. And I like to always go back with the first shade that we started with and revive the tone of that one. That way we don't lose any contrast and any saturation at all. Taking the black shade in the palette called Shawata, I'm only going to take this in the outer corners of my lash line, making sure it's not too exaggerated. Using Soft Ochre Paint Pot by MAC and a big fluffy concealer brush, I'm going to revive my eyelids without cutting them, just to kind of open it up and make it a little bit brighter, but not creating any sharp lines. And right on top, I'm using Jelly Eye Shimmer in the shade Bright Idea by Morphe 2. This is just as a base before I put my glitter shimmer on top. And quickly taking my MAC Reflex Pro glitter and setting this right on top with my ring finger and kind of blending out the edges, that way there's no sharp lines. Using One Size Beauty Until Dawn setting spray, I'm going to be setting my eyelids just to prevent any fallout later on. And now using Black Chalk by MAC, I'm just going to quickly line my eyes. And taking the shade Kufuru with a smaller blending brush and just kind of blur out the edges of this one. That way it is defined, but it kind of blends into the shadow really well. And right after, I am going to take off my tapes, that way we can start on the skin. Taking MAC Conceal and Correct palette in the shade Deep, I'm going to be taking the color Orange just to counteract any blue tones on my face. For my foundation, I'm going to be using Prolonged Wear Nourishing Waterproof Foundation by MAC in NC25. I actually went ahead and applied 2 layers of this one. That way I can get the most amount of coverage that I want, but it's not too heavy or too cakey on my face. And for contour, I'm going to be using the Studio Skull foundation, also by MAC, in the shade NC50. This is a really dark shade for me, but the way that I like to do this is by actually creating the contrast first and then kind of marrying all the colors together. So I'm first applying it with a brush and immediately going with a bigger brush. That way I can actually build everything little by little and there's no like muddiness or like craziness going on. And when it comes to my forehead and temples contour, I actually like to connect everything together. That way, once I put the wig and like all the powders and everything, it all kind of makes sense and it all becomes one. And for my nose, I actually went and created a really skinny nose. I really wanted to make sure this is like as realistic as possible once everything is blended out. But I also want it to be super snatched. Once that's all blended out, I'm going to be starting with my highlights. So I'm going to take the Juvia's Place concealer in the shade 22. This is going to be like my main highlight shade. That way I can start sharpening everything out and also giving myself a good amount of contrast. And right after, I'm going to be blending it with a dry beauty blender just to keep the most amount of coverage and to blend it really flawlessly. I'm also using the beauty blender to sharpen out the edges of my nose, but right after, I'm going to take a smaller blending brush. That way I can start creating the nose that I want. And mind you, I have a very crooked nose, so I'm trying my best to make this as straight as possible. And to achieve that super bright under eye, I'm going to be using the shade 24, also by Juvia's Place Concealer, but only keeping it under my eyes. Now going in with the Jaclyn Hill Liquid Blush in Plush Coral, I'm going to be applying this really high on my cheekbones, but mostly farther back. That way I can kind of concentrate the colors more towards the back of my face. That way I can actually create like a more pulled back look. To set all my highlights, I'm going to be using the Fit Me Loose Powder in the shade 06 Fair. This is a very bright powder, and this is exactly what I need to revive those bright areas. And also to clean and sharp out my nose as well. Now for the rest of my face, I'm going to be using Honey Loose Powder by Laura Mercier and using a One Size Beauty Powder Puff. I'm going to be using this color because I want to maintain the warmth on my face. If I were to use a translucent powder, I will get kind of like a white cast all over. So using this one that has more warmth and yellow tones really helps me maintain that sun-kissed warm tone to my skin. After applying all those powders, I let them sit for at least a minute or two on my face. And now taking a big fluffy brush like this one and press all that normal skin tone powder, avoiding the under eye, because now I go in with a smaller fluffy brush and do the same, kind of like blending it and kind of making sure there's no excess just laying on my skin. Now to bring my face back to life, I'm going to be using Totally Taupe Bronzer by MAC and really push these contours forward and make sure everything is super blended and very contrasted as well. And taking MAC Hey Coral Hey Mineralized Blush, I'm going to be applying this really high on my cheekbones, almost where you were actually highlight, but then blending it a little further back and of course to the apple of the cheekbones, but maintaining it really high. And just a very small amount on the tip of my nose. Taking a metal spoolie, I'm going to be taking off any excess powder or foundation out of my brows. That way when I fill them in, they don't look ashy or crusty. Using the Prolong Wear Fluid line in the shade Low Lights by MAC, I'm going to be extending the corners of my brows, making them a little more straighter and pulled back as well, and then using the same product to fill them in, but ever so slightly. And setting them in place with Spiked Eyebrow Boost by MAC. This is going to be a little bit of a lighter shade, that way it actually gives more dimension to my brows. Using the shade Kafuru from the Juvia's Place 2 palette, I am going to be starting to define my lower lash line. I'm going to first sketch it out and blend it out with a lighter shade, that way I can have like a really sharp defined look. Now using the shade You Did with a fluffier, smaller brush, just to blend the edges of this one. Now taking a small angle brush, I'm going to be using the black, which is the shade Shawata. I'm going to make a really thin line across the bottom of my lash line, extending it towards the inner corners. Once we are done with our eyeshadow, I'm going ahead and set everything in place. I'm going to be using the Fix Plus Coconut by MAC, and I'm doing 2 coats of this one, making sure I dry it in between layers. And to give myself a gorgeous glowy skin, I'm going to be using Glovo Glow by MAC and really go in when it comes to the highlights. I apply it on the cheekbones, on my temples, on my cupid's bow, on my shin, on my nose, on my forehead. Basically almost everywhere that you will naturally highlight, but a little bit extra since this is drag makeup for sure. Using MAC Black Track Fluid line, I'm going to be creating a new inner corner, basically a new inner wing. This was really hard to film, but as you guys can see, you can kind of tell what I'm doing right here. And then off camera, I went ahead and applied a white pencil inside my eyes. Now for lashes, I'm going to be using Slim Thick by Little Old Soul. These are very separate and fluffy, so it allows the look to still show through. And now for lips, I'm going to be using Soar Lip Pencil by MAC for my general shape, and then I'm gonna take Plum Lip Pencil to give more contrast and also define my lips really well. And now for my general lip color, I'm going to be using Celebrity Skin by Jeffree Star, making sure I apply kind of a small amount and then just blend it in. And to make this super glossy and gorgeous, I'm going to be taking See Through by MAC. And now off camera, I'm going to be applying some rhinestones and set my skin in place, and I'll be right back. Alright everyone, and this is the final look. I love this hair. It's very like Latina, Puerto Riqueña, and I don't know, I'm just obsessed with this look, and I hope that you guys do as well. It is still draggy, but of course it has like a subtle touch to it. That way it gives more of a hyper like glam femme look. I feel very gorgeous and like, you know, it's like a mixture of everything that I like, and honestly I just feel amazing. I am ready to go to a club, and I'll probably put some clips of how it went. I am obsessed with this look, to be honest. I feel very comfortable. I feel very myself. So if you guys like this video just as much as I do, please like, share, and subscribe. I love you guys. I really appreciate having you here with me today, and I cannot wait to see you guys on the next one.